Hello everyone. I hope you're well on this cold winter day. This is your first extra credit assignment for the Compassionate Self-Discipline class, and this assignment is focused on a model called the Battering cycle. I apologize for the lighting. It's not ideal. I can see, obviously my recording studio leaves something to be desired. There's holes in the walls that lets all the light in, but I think we'll be okay. So the battering cycle is a model that I have found over time to be extremely useful and helpful in getting some distance from conditioned mind and seeing the processes that go on within conditioned mind. You know, as we have talked about in practice lots of times in lots of places, you know, the glue that kind of holds the whole conditioned process together is what at the monastery I learned to call self-hatred. It's the beatings that we give ourselves. You know, it's the self-judgment, the self-criticism, and that kind of thing. That's the kind of really the glue that holds it all together. It's the thing that keeps us in a state of self-consciousness, in, you know, not the good kind of self-consciousness, and keeps us unaware of conditioned mind and what conditioned mind is up to and how it is controlling us, manipulating us, and making our decisions for us and everything else. So the battering cycle is an excellent way of diagramming like how the self-hating process works, especially around things like addictive behaviors and especially around something like self-discipline, which is why I wanted it to be a part of this class. Many of you have done this with me before, and so I decided to make an extra credit assignment instead of one of the main assignments, but it deserves to be one of the main assignments, at least from my point of view. It's extremely helpful in the process of disidentification. So here's how it goes. I made a little very simple kind of primitive drawing that I'm going to show you. I also took a picture of it, and I'm going to send this out with the video so you have a chance to see it. I'm not sure, but I think the writing in the drawing might come out backwards for you. But I'm going to point I'm going to have this just so I have something to point at. But then you can refer to the photo I sent you to of the thing. So I'm going to go through and describe this. Originally, this model comes out of, it's a way of modeling how domestic violence works. I'm not going to get into that whole thing because it's kind of irrelevant to the class. The thing that it does really well is it maps, like I said, it maps internal abuse. And so here's how that works. So there's four stages. I'm going to go through and describe the 4 stages and how they relate to each other, and then I'm going to give you a couple examples. So the first stage is the stress. So what is a stress? I mean, some of that's really obvious. Life is inherently stressful, I think, and from a certain point of view, at least in the sense that there's a lot to do, there's a lot on our plates. We live in a very complex world these days with lots of expectations and responsibilities. Now, of course, and this is a bit of an aside, is it necessary to be stressed out about that? No, it's not necessary at all. But most people experience their to-do lists and their responsibilities and everything with some degree of stress. So there's like an outward kind of stress like that. There's also an inward stress. And the inward stress comes from a lot of different things, from our relationship with conditioned mind, you know, most generally, but more specifically and more fundamentally, it comes from the need that we have within conditioned mind to be the right person. And the fact that if we're in conditioned mind, we are continually failing at that. I don't know see if that resonates with your experience, but from what I can see, by and large, you know, someone who's involved with conditioned mind is continually attempting to be the person that they should be and failing at that. It's miserable. It's why we suffer. It's a big part of how we suffer, and it's going on for the vast majority of people. And of course, some people are on the other side of that too, where they just assume they're right and they're better than everybody, and so they don't experience it in that way, in the overt way, but the same kind of stress is there in a more covert way where they have to maintain this idea all the time that they're right and invulnerable and do everything exactly the way it's supposed to be and all that. That's a full-time job in itself. So anyway, so to say that more simply, so the stress in life comes from trying to be the person that we should be, that we're taught we should be, not in actuality who we should be, but who we're taught should be, and we're failing at that. Okay? So we're attempting to do that, and the stress is building and building and building and building and building while we are trying to make that happen and then failing. Okay? So eventually we get to a place where we can't maintain that anymore. It's just too difficult. And so we need some way to release the stress and let go of all that energy. And then we come to the second spot, which is called the coping behavior. So the coping behavior, that's any number of things, and you probably have several that you do if you're like most people. The classics, drinking, drugs, acting out sexually, spending money, overworking, that kind of thing. There can also be more subtle forms of it too. Procrastination is one, for example. Slightly more subtle forms of coping behaviors. So we go along doing the stress, and then we come to a coping behavior. So I have a drink, I smoke marijuana, I yell. Here's another one. I yell at somebody, I kick the dog, I procrastinate something, I zone out on Netflix for days and days, whatever it takes. So I have done my coping behavior, and I have relieved the stress. Okay, well, what happens next? Next thing is feeling better and feeling worse. So I feel better because I've relieved the stress. It actually feels better. It's like, I'm there in front of Netflix. I'm no longer concerned about being the right person or not. Now I'm concentrated on what this show is, and I'm just escaping into that, and I feel a lot better. But then I feel worse. Why do I feel worse? Because I have now doing the coping behavior in just about everybody's system proves that I'm not the person that I should be. So it is actually doing exactly what I was trying to avoid doing when I was in the stress, which was being the right person. Now I have proven that I'm not the right person, I'm the wrong person, and I deserve to be punished, essentially. That's just so you know. That's also, most fundamentally for ourselves, internally the coping behavior is an internal beating. In the domestic model, it's an outward beating. Like, most stereotypically, a man beats his wife or his partner. Internally, we beat ourselves up, or we allow conditioned mind to beat us up. That's the most kind of essential coping behavior. And all of the coping behaviors lead to that. They all lead to a beating. Okay, so I felt better, I felt worse. Okay, it can't stay there forever. I'm in the pits now. So what am I going to do in order to get out of this? Well, I'm going to go to the last part, which is the decision to be perfect. Okay, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to watch Netflix. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to whatever it was that I did. Now I'm going to try to be the person that I am supposed to be. I'm going to recommit to that conditioned standards, and this time I'm going to get it right. I'm going to be the person I should be, and I'm not going to go through all this again, and I'm going to be successful. And then the stress, that sets up the stress, and the stress starts to build, and we go around and around and around. Okay? All right, so a couple examples. So let's do the classic one, is the drinking. So, the stress, we explain the cause of the stress. And part of the stress, too, is, someone who is trying to quit drinking has been through this many times before. And so there's the stress of, knowing that this is probably going to happen again and trying really, really hard not to have it happen. So try not to drink. And meanwhile, trying to be a good person and failing, trying to be a good person, be the right person and failing. Finally can't stand it anymore, so the person takes a drink. Feels good, right? So it feels really good, but it feels terrible. I can't believe I did that again. And plus, if somebody is an alcoholic, there's all kinds of external logistical consequences, failed relationships, ruined career opportunities, and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. So I feel better the drinker feels better for a little bit, feels worse, and then I'm never going to drink again. And here comes the stress. Here's another one. Let's do procrastination. How about? So the stress is the same. So maybe like I've got some big thing that I've got to do at work, some kind of presentation, or I've got a project that is due. I can't allow myself truly to be successful. We were talking about that a little bit in the class. I can't allow myself truly to be successful because, inside myself, I believe that I'm not successful. I'm not a good enough person. I'm a loser, that kind of thing. So I have to try really hard to be successful and fail. That's a classic conditioned process. So there's a stress of that, trying to get it right, and it's just like, I can't stand it. This isn't working. This isn't going to happen right. I'm going to fail, and then coping behavior. So maybe what might, well, I'll procrastinate. So I'm going to put it off. And then while I'm procrastinating, I'm probably going to do some other coping behaviors too. Maybe I'll watch Netflix or, something. I'll get lost on the internet, or maybe I'll do some other little project that doesn't really need to be done, that makes me feel like at least I'm being a little bit productive, but I'm actually using that task to avoid what I really need to do. So then feels better, right? Because I've escaped for a moment from this dilemma where I'm trying to do this thing that I believe deeply inside myself that I can't do, that it's not going to turn out right, and it's going to prove I'm a failure. So I feel a little better for a little while, but then I feel worse because now, of course, I haven't done the thing. And now it's, when I wake up after hours on the computer or whatever I've done, or wake up after, a night of, drugs and alcohol, and I still haven't done the thing. And now there's even more pressure. And it's even more likely that I'm going to fail because now I'm rushed and on and on and on. Okay? And then we go up to the decision to be perfect. I can't believe I did this again. I can't believe that I've allowed, that I did that. I went off and I drank and smoked weed or, whatever I did. Okay, never again. I've got to get my life in order. This can't happen again. I'm never going to do this again. From now on, if I have something to do, I'm going to do it right away. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to be successful. And here comes the stress to set it up. Okay, I hope that's fairly clear. It's a simple model, really. So what I want you to do is to look at your relationship with self-discipline through the lens of this model and see if you can map it out. You can use your mapping skills that you practiced in the first assignment and see if you can map it out. Map out how you do something you don't want to do using the battering cycle. Map out how you don't do something that you do want to do. Also, if you've got coping behaviors going on, and very likely your whatever sabotaging processes are happening in terms of self-discipline do involve some kind of coping behavior. In the class, we've been talking a lot about that. So you can map those out individually too. So have some fun with it. Just use the model to explore, how the battering cycle happens inside your own mind, and pay attention in particular to the self-hating part of it. Because what this does is, I'll give you just a little bit more information. So in the middle of it is an identity. So like for me personally, like my process around self-discipline and pretty much everything else, my condition process was exactly this. This is partly why when I first ran into this model, it blew my mind because it so completely described what went on inside my own head. And so there's an identity being maintained. An identity that is believing the self-hatred. So in my case, I learned to believe a really long time ago when I was a little kid, I'm a loser, I'm no good, I'm incompetent, I can't do it, that kind of thing. And so I would do this process as a way of proving to myself that that's true, that identity, that belief that I have in the middle is true. Okay, so look for that too, and look particularly for the messaging that's coming from conditioned mind. What does self-hate say to you as a result of having failed to do what you want to do, for example? And how is that maintained? How are you kept in a process of not being allowed to be successful, essentially, and have what you truly want, and are left in a self-hating relationship with conditioned mind instead? Okay, so you go ahead and use paper, write it all out. It's way more effective to do that than just try to think it, do it in your head. Get it out there where you can actually see it. Do 2 or 3 or 4 scenarios, whatever you feel called to do, and then see what you see, and then let us know what you see in the class. Okay? All right, thanks very much. Take care, be well. Thank you so much for your participation and your willingness to do this work. I'll see you soon in the class.